Okay, so hey everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how you can swap any cluster on any E9x that I know of, and the steps on how to do it using an R270 programmer, and then NCS Expert and Perfekt Toolbox with a Windows laptop. So without further ado, let's get into this. So as you can see here, I have a donor cluster. Now this is actually my old cluster that I pulled out of my 128i after completing the 135 cluster swap. So the process is exactly the same. I just don't want to recalibrate the one that's already in the car, so we're going to be using this one again. But yeah, so we can get started with the disassembly steps. So if we pick up the cluster, you can see, zoom in a little bit here. So you can see there's 2 tabs on the bottom, 1 tab on the side, 2 tabs on the top. So 6 tabs in total that we need to remove to free up this front area of the cluster. So I'll do that quick. Okay. All right, there we go. So now we have this free. Set that to the side, and we can focus on this. So ironically, the best tool that I found for completing this next task is just a simple kitchen fork. Because what we're going to want to do is note the position of our dials. And so they're all about zeroed out, which is perfect for us. Because we're going to need to reference that in just a little bit. But then we can actually pull these all off. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to slide it underneath and then just apply a little bit of pressure and push off. Now if you have trim tools, this is also a good spot to use those. But I don't have any, surprisingly, so this is a good tool for that. So I'll just go ahead and you're all the way zoomed in, so you can slide it underneath the speedometer here, and we'll just pry out. As you can see, came off perfectly. So we can do the same here for the tack. Let's see if we can get under it a little bit more. There we go. It looks like I nudged that, so you can just put it back to about 0. But again, it's not super important that all these are in the right spot because we're going to be calibrating it later using Perfekt Toolbox. We just want it to be close to the right position. So same thing here. I'll just pull that off. Oh, well, it looks like that's separated. We can reattach that in a second. So I guess I haven't had this happen before, but it looks like these 2 things, if the camera will focus, came apart, so you can just put them back together just like that. And now it's back together. So now continuing, we want to remove this black backing plate here, and to do that we're going to need to release a couple clips from this connector here. So I'll just grab a pick, and we're just going to want to push up on this black back panel so that we can keep the clips unclipped once they're out. And see if I can get these guys. There's one. And there's the last one. Okay. So now as you can see here, we've exposed the rear of the PCB. So we're going to have to disconnect this ribbon connector here. What you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to pull this black connector down and back. So I'll just do that quick. Try not to cover it up. There you go. And then I'll do the other side here. Okay, so now you can see that connector is out, and we can simply remove the ribbon cable. So now we're ready to remove the PCB. So there's going to be 4 tabs holding the PCB in. We can just start popping those out. There we go. Let me get the last one here. Okay, so now we've successfully removed the gauges from the PCB, and now we can focus on the next part, which is removing the data from the EEPROM. So as you can see here, there is a little chip. Let the camera focus. Now this guy in the middle is what we're concerned about. You'll see that it says 080D0WQ. That's going to be our EEPROM memory chip that we want to remove the data from. So we're gonna grab our test clip here and get that attached. So I'll show you how to do that quick. All right, just so you can see a little bit better, I removed this. So I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to make it out on camera. Wait for it to focus here. Okay, there we go. So I'm not sure if you're able to make it out, but in the lower left corner of that EEPROM memory chip, there is a number 1. That's gonna indicate that that bottom left corner is pin number 1. And on our test clip here, we have a pink wire that indicates which pin on this test clip is pin number 1. So we're gonna wanna align that with pin number 1 on the board here and get that on. So it's a little bit difficult to do on camera here, but let's see if I can get it on there for you guys. So it looks like we've made a good connection there, and we can go ahead and connect that to our programmer. All right, so now we've got everything connected. We're gonna go over to the laptop and try and get things working over there. Okay everyone, so now that we're on the computer here, can open up our R270 programmer. So I've already got that here. And what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna go down to the advanced function section and then select this middle item here. And then once we're in this menu, we wanna select our IC type. And for us, it's going to be the 080D0WQ. Just verify this, it'll say it on the actual EEPROM. And then for DAS odometer, we're gonna wanna select type 2. And then from here, we would read the binary file off of the EEPROM. But since I've already written that onto the new cluster, I can just load that here so you guys can see what the steps are. So after you've loaded your binary file, you're gonna wanna scroll down until you find line 002E. So you can see that right here. Now, as you can see, there's some VIN information at the end here. And what we're gonna wanna do is we're just going to want to block this out with Fs. So we're gonna change all of that information on this line to Fs. So looks like we have 2 more characters to go, 1 more character. And now all of that VIN information is removed. So we can stop inserting Fs into this binary file. And then from here, you just want to go back to this menu, select your IC, select type 2 again, and then select write. And then after that completes successfully, you will have cleared the VIN from your donor cluster and successfully virginized it so that we can add the VIN from your vehicle in SAS Expert later. Okay, so now that we've successfully virginized the cluster, we can go ahead and reassemble things. So we can disconnect our test clip here and set this off to the side. And now we can reinsert this back into the cluster housing. So we'll just make sure that we get the ribbon cable underneath or over top the PCB, and then make sure the stepper motor pins are through the PCB, and we can just click it into place. And then next, we're going to want to insert this ribbon cable again, so we can just slip it into the spot, right like that. And then we're just going to push up on this black connector so that it secures it back into place. Okay, now that's connected, so we can flip this over. Looks like this got a little loose, so we'll just get this gauge face back into position. We can go ahead and put our rear protector on. So that'll just slip on and it'll click into place with the connector. And now we can reapply our gauge dials. So we're just going to put it roughly in the same position as they were before. So we'll get that at 0. This one also at 0. And this at 0. It's not super important to get these in the exact position that they left in because we're going to recalibrate them with Perfekt Toolbox, but just try and get them as close as you can so you don't have to calibrate them a ton. Now I just noticed that I forgot to put this guy back in, so looks like we're going to have to take this apart a little bit to get this odometer reset pin back in the spot it's supposed to. Okay, so as you can see, I was able just to slip it in the side there by removing one of the dials, so we didn't have to remove everything again. So, helpful tip if you are like me and you forgot to put that back on. So now we'll just get the dial back in roughly the correct position. And then we can get the gauge faces put back on. So we'll just slide it over the top like this. And now your cluster has been reassembled. So now that everything's reassembled, we can go inside the car and I'll show you how to code everything with NCS Expert, and then we can do a little bit of the calibration with Perfekt Toolbox. Okay, so now that we're in the car, and yep, you can see the cluster. So what we're gonna do first is we're going to connect our DCAN cable to the vehicle. So we'll do that quick, and then we can open up INPA to see if everything is connected correctly. So let's see. Open up INPA. And yep, we have battery on, ignition on, so we are connected. So next what we want to do is we're going to go to NCS Expert here. And we're going to go to Datei, Profile Laden. And then we want to be in factory coding, because we are going to be coding this to factory specifications. And so then we're going to want to click F1 and then F3. This will ask us what chassis we are, and since this is a generic E9x, I mean technically we're E82, but all of E9x is under this E89 chassis code. We're going to click OK, and then we'll pull our vehicle order from the FRM. So as you can see, we have the VIN here, and then this is the FA, or the vehicle order. So then we can select back, and we want to say process ECU, and we are going to process the combi, or probably a German acronym for gauge cluster, but we'll select that. We can select this, okay, and we just want to confirm here that job name is SG Codieren. And then we can select execute job. Now obviously I've already coded mine, so I'm not going to code it again, but that is the steps that you can follow to code your cluster. And after that, the tamper dot should be removed because you've written the VIN to your new cluster. So odds are now that your new cluster is not exactly programmed to what it needs to be, so some of the dials might be a little bit off, and so that's where we want to use this tool called Perfekt Toolbox. And so if we open it up, I'll show you a little bit of what this does. So we just want to read everything. And okay, so it's pulled all of the information here. And we can go into, like, I don't know, let's try the oil temperature. So let's just confirm that our oil temp is working as expected. So we can put it up to operating temperature. It should be right about 125. And as you can see, the dial here has now moved into the middle. I guess it's probably a little closer to 120, but you get the idea. Yep, so as you can see, right smack dab in the middle, and then we can reset that when we're done testing it. Same thing with the tachometer here. So we can test it at, I don't know, let's say 5,000 RPM. Okay, now as you can see, mine's reading a little bit high at, looks like 5,100 RPM. That's intentional. I'd rather have it rev a little bit higher than or a little bit lower. But let's say you wanted to fix that. So what you would end up doing is this start position offset here. We can back that down a little bit. So let's go to, like, I don't know, 40 steps. And then we can write to ECU. You're going to see the gauge reset. And you'll just notice that the tachometer needle is slightly lower than it used to be. And so now we can set that at 5,000. And as you can see, it's very, very close there. So no, we can just test it maybe at like, I don't know, let's go to 7,000, which is our red line. As you can see, it's reading slightly high again, which I prefer, but let's test it in the lower rev range so we can go to 1500. As you can see, right on the money. Let's go to 2500. Right on the money. 4500. Just a little bit high. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to leave it now, and we can reset the gauge. Same thing with the fuel tank. We can go through, we'll set it to 50%. This is already calibrated, so it should be pretty close. Yep. And let's go to 100 just to see. Reading a little bit over the 1. So perfect. But yeah, so this should show you, I know there was one person on the Facebook post that I put out that was saying they'd rather have their oil temp stop at a certain certain reading. And what you can do there is, like, let's say you wanted it to stop at the middle. You could, which I don't know why you want to do that, but I'm just saying that for example's purpose. So we can see the middle value here is 121 degrees Celsius. Basically, you can see that like these oil temperatures and motor steps are aligning to the entire gauge. So what you could do is you could say like, okay, I want my max oil reading to be 150 Celsius. You could just adjust the rest of these values here so that they will read correctly for your new max oil value. So, but I'm just gonna pull it again from the ECU so I don't miss anything. So yeah, I hope that answers a lot of people's questions about how to do this cluster swap. Overall, it's a pretty easy job. Took me an afternoon, but again, as you can see, the R270 programmer part of it can definitely be the most finicky. So I would just use caution with that. And yeah, troubleshooting steps are available out on the interwebs. That's how I did it. So, but yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully you guys can now get some temperature readings in your 128 or other E9x car.